Hello, everyone, and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and we've got another great show tonight as we answer your gardening questions. Before we get to that, let me introduce tonight's panel from Nebraska Extension and University Landscape Services. We have bug guy Tom Weisling.
Hi, everybody.
Master of all trades, Jeff Culbertson in the turf chair.
I'll give her my best.
We have Kevin Corris, Rots and Spots.
Hello, hello.
And Elizabeth Killinger answering all those landscape questions.
Hello.
You know, unfortunately, this is a taped program, so we can't take your calls tonight, but you can still submit questions via email for a future show. The email address is byf@unl.edu. When you send us a question, please tell us as much information as you can, including which part of the state you live in. Attach pictures as JPEGs to that email, and do keep in mind that we can't get to everybody's question on the air. Remember, you can follow Backyard Farmer during the week on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Pinterest, and probably something we've not heard of yet. Before we go to questions, let's look at some samples. And so, Tom, what did we bring in?
Pear slugs.
A pair of slugs. So
They're rose slugs.
Rose slugs.
Would you like to see them?
Sure.
All right, let's see if we can get this. It has not been behaving very well tonight, but that little critter right there, it's called a slug because it kind of has a little slimy appearance to it, but it's not slimy at all. This is the larvae of a little hymenopteran, a little sawfly. And this caterpillar has little chewing mouth parts. Now, the way the life cycle works is in the springtime, the adults come out. Female will find some nice young growth, rose growth, and she will lay eggs on the underside of the leaf. Then these little larvae hatch out, and they start to feed on the leaves and cause all kinds of neat little skeletonizing. So they're just eating the soft parts of the leaves and leaving the veins behind. Now, they will continue to feed for several weeks, and they will eventually pupate. They'll drop to the soil, pupate, and come out as adults. Now, if it's a European sawfly, they just have one generation per year. If it's a spiny sawfly, then they'll have anywhere from 2 to 6, depending on the season. Easy to control. You see them on there, hand remove them, spray them off with water. You could also use, if you want to use a spray, an oil or an insecticidal soap.
All right, excellent. And I know we've already gotten some calls about those guys this year, so thank you, Tom. All right, Jeff, that looks like danger.
Well, it could be dangerous. I brought in today a mower blade just to discuss a little bit about. It's been about 2 months since, for a lot of us, since spring started a little early this year. And so if you haven't had your blade off your mower yet, this would be a good time to get out there, take it off, make sure that when we sharpen it, that we sharpen it to the bevel that it came with, that we don't change the bevel on the blade. You know, also make sure you've cleaned out the underside of your deck. If you haven't changed the oil this year, it'd be a good time to do that. So, you know, these blades and these our mowers take a lot of abuse, especially early on with all the leaves we're mowing, sticks, especially if we've had storm damage or something like that. So this is a good time. Again, it's been about 2 months to do some of that stuff. We should be getting into the time of rots and spots, and so a nice sharp blade on your mower will help prevent some of that stuff with your turf later on.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff. All right, Kevin. Lovely orangeness.
Indeed. You know, Kim, sometimes plants are like old farm machinery. When you leave them sit out in the rain, they get rusty.
How cute.
I'm kidding. I mean, you have to leave your plants out in the rain. But there have been really great conditions this year for rust. And we have rust on all sorts of different types of ornamental plants in our yard. What I'm holding up here is a pear, an ornamental pear. This is a Cleveland Select. And it has rust, and rusts are easily identified because of the name. It identifies their symptoms. It's a really bright orange color that it produces on both the top and bottom surface of the leaf. And again, there are many different species of rust. They have a very large host range, and a lot of plants throughout the landscape are susceptible. So that was, if I can get another one here, that was an ornamental pear. This is buckthorn. You can see how there's a lesion there on the stem, there's a lesion on the petiole, and then all over the leaves. It's very easy to identify big, erumpent, bright orange lesions. It's a rust. So what can you do about it? Well, we're getting a little bit late in the season to be able to treat with any kind of a fungicide. The fungicides that are developed for this are a preventative type fungicide, and that makes it difficult to apply because you kind of have to predict when the disease is going to show up, and that's not always easy to do, but you have to keep track now of the plants in your yard that do have this disease and think about next year. And if you really do want to prevent this, you can apply a propiconazole-based fungicide, and that will give you some protective, some protection against these fungi next spring. Also, the disease is favored by wet foliage, so if you can keep your foliage dry by increasing exposure to sunlight and wind, that'll also help reduce the amount of this rust that we see in the environment. But it doesn't really kill the plant. It's kind of hard to get rid of. It's one of those things that really, in the end, it's just kind of cool. It's really bright orange and fun to look at, and again, it's not going to kill the plant, so maybe just enjoy it.
Great. Most people don't. All right, Elizabeth, what'd you bring?
I brought a lovely bouquet of a lot of different types of plant material. And when we pick out plants from the nursery, the first thing everybody selects their plants on is based upon bloom color, bloom time, everything about the bloom. Well, the bloom is the most fleeting part of the plant. And so what I have here are a lot of different types of foliage that's going to stand throughout the entire season. So the lady's mantle in the front, those big leaves, and then the cool part about lady's mantle is you get the foliage, you get the flower, and then you get the fun seed pods that kind of follow it. You've got the fun texture of the pasque flower followed by the fun seed heads. You know, we can talk about lamb's ear for a lot. The flowers are pretty, but, you know, we really try to grow it for the foliage. Coral bells, a lot of these, we're talking a lot of different types of textures. You know, mixing your textures, you can mix your colors, you can select your plant material more than just based upon the flower. We want to look at the texture of the foliage. We want to look about, you know, multiple seasons of interest, but you know, we like the flowers, but we want to pick it on the foliage too.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we kind of like your vase there, too.
Yes, quality.
Excuse me. All right, Tom, you get the first picture question. This is a Lincoln Viewer, a very old, established silver maple, a couple bare spots, and then 10 or 20 little holes. She says they kind of look chewed. She wants to know if it's termites or is it woodpeckers?
Okay. Termites, we'll start with them. They have to come from the ground. They're subterranean. So on their route up the tree, unless they can come in a badly damaged, hollowed out tree on the inside, they have to make a mud tube along various crevices on the bark. So this does not have any signs of mud tubing, and they do not bore to the outside. So this is definitely woodpecker.
Okay.
And being a bug guy, I'm going to talk about woodpeckers because I slept in a Holiday Inn Express recently, so I know a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So now, woodpeckers are after insects. They eat insects.
Yeah.
They also like sap. So this is probably yellow-bellied sapsucker, which is a fun name to say, I think. But you look at those holes, they're beveled in. There's a lot of bark pieces that are missing. So something's been pecking there, and it's been looking for the sap in there. And sometimes they go after insects that are attracted to the sap. So that's what I think's going on. What do you do about I mean, really what's happening in the springtime, they have a nest nearby. They're looking for a good tree to go get sap from frequently and go get insects from. So they're pecking in one particular area, they're scouting around. So once they find a favorite tree, then they'll peck on that one quite a bit. This does not look like it's a favorite tree because you would get a lot more damage than that. How to control them? Commonly people just say, I'm just gonna shoot them. You can't, they are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty. So don't shoot them. So if you are getting a lot of problems in a particular area, you can wrap it in burlap or maybe hardware cloth.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, Jeff, we'll see if you really know your weeds.
Okay, I'll try.
This is a viewer who says they have black medic.
Okay.
They're in Ravenna, and they have it in the lawn and the flower beds. They want to know how to get rid of it. Is it safe to use that sort of thing in a mulch? So if you get rid of it, can you use it in a mulch? Is there anything about it that would be toxic?
Okay. Well, it's a clover. It's in that clover group, and so it does fix nitrogen. And the reason people will end up with it, typically, in all honesty, is that you either have compaction issues or fertility issues. And my guess is, like a lot of these things, it's somewhat attractive. They might have had one or two plants flower last year. They let them go to flower, didn't pull them out. They produced an abundant amount of seed, and now you have them in a lot of places. So the treatment, I think certainly in your landscape beds, is to look at pulling. I think I'd go through and pull all that. You might want to look at applying a pre-emerge in August, the first part of August, to see if we can capture some of those as far as germinating this fall and dealing with that since it's an annual.
All right.
And then fertilize.
All right. Keep that fertility.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. All right, Kevin, this is from out in kind of the Lexington, Cozad area. These guys were in the mulch bed. She wasn't sure what causes them to grow. They look like nuts, but they're soft and dust puffs out.
Cool, they're actually alien eggs. No, I kid. I kid, they are not. No, they're puffballs. They're a fungus. They're really, really cool. A lot of times people send these pictures in because they want to get rid of them and they want some kind of a way to get rid of them. There's really not a lot we can offer. There are no chemicals available to treat for them. They do like kind of the moist conditions, wet conditions. So if your mulch pile gets moist and wet, you might see them. But if it's a mulch pile around a tree, you want it to be moist and wet. So you're kind of fighting a losing battle there. But it's a puffball fungus. It's not poisonous or anything, not going to hurt you. And they're ephemeral, so they won't last very long and might come back year after year, but won't last very long when it is there and should go away on its own.
They're fun to puff, too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Elizabeth, you have two different viewers, two different questions. One's from Rembrandt, one is from Seward, and they both have sets of evergreens. This first one wondering, okay, they're on the west side of the house, anything they can do to the ones in awful shape? Is it time to start over? And I believe the second one is kind of the same thing. Arborvitae use, a lot of pruning has gone on these.
And unfortunately, with those woody evergreens, once you get that death and dieback deep down inside and there's no new needles or no new growth toward the outside edge, those branches are not going to sprout new growth. With that yew that kind of had a hollow bottom, if you're going to do a shrub or a hedge out of a yew, you want to make sure you make it shaped like a ladder so the bottom part gets the sun and then you still have needles down there. Unfortunately, with both of these pictures, I don't think that those are going to be where they want them to be. They're not going to fill back out. They're not going to be the good shrub. So unfortunately, they're going to probably think about removal with a couple of these if they want that full arborvitae, that full yew. And like I said, if you're going to hedge that yew, you want to make sure that you make that bottom out like a ladder.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Well, just about everybody has a bottle of this or that in their garage or their shed that is probably expired. Safely disposing of any pesticides or herbicides that have outlived their usefulness can be pretty tricky. And right now we're going to hear some tips from Nebraska Extension Pesticide Safety Assistant Ben Beckman about what you can do to get rid of those chemicals safely.
When dealing with pests on a landscape, we often turn towards some sort of pesticide application to deal with our problems. However, we normally forget about the problem of dealing with the leftover application materials once we're through with that initial application. A lot of times these application materials are some sort of toxic material that we need to dispose of properly, and the best way to dispose of that is to make sure that we don't have any to begin with. So making sure that you calculate the area out, make sure that you're only buying the amount of product that you need for your initial application is the best step that we can take to make sure that we're using those pesticides properly. If you do end up with some sort of extra pesticide, turning towards maybe some neighbors to get rid of that is probably the best step that you can take. If you do need to store it, we always recommend storing those pesticides in their original container so there's no confusion as to what exactly that is, and making sure you're storing those in a secure area where pets and children can't get to it, also into a dry area and an area that's going to be somewhat moderate in temperature. Anytime that we have extreme heat or freezing temperatures, that's going to break down that pesticide faster and it's going to reduce its effectiveness, especially if we're talking about using that into the next season. Some of you might have some pesticides in your home shed or in the garage that have been there for a few years. After a few years, pesticides usually break down to the point that they're not going to be effective and give us the control that we want anymore. We can dispose of those pesticides in a number of different ways. One of those is to go ahead and apply those according to the label, making sure that you're not exceeding the recommended rate on the label. Is one way of doing that. You might not get the best control, but you're going to get rid of that pesticide product in a safe manner. The state of Nebraska does not have any programs to dispose of toxic pesticide wastes that are statewide as of right now. However, if you're fortunate enough to live in Omaha, Lincoln, or Grand Island, those communities do have programs that allow you to bring in household waste products, and they will accept most pesticide products. If you need more information on where to dispose of those pesticides at, you can visit our website at pested.unl.edu/disposal. If you have a lot of product that you need to get rid of, there are number of companies across the state of Nebraska that will accept some of those toxic residues and will dispose of them, but they usually come at some sort of fee cost. You can find more information about those at our website as well. And always remember, when you are working with any of these chemical products, that your own personal safety is important, even if you're just cleaning out products or disposing of them, so make sure that you're wearing the proper protective equipment.
And as always, we want to encourage our viewers to be safe with their chemicals and pesticides if you're going to use them. And the first step, of course, is to check those labels, look at the expiration date, and then do it properly for everybody. All right, second picture is yours, Tom. All she wants to know is, what is this? And I want to know, is it a good guy, a bad guy? And it's pretty cool.
Ooh, shiny.
Okay, what is it?
Oh, I got to talk about this. Well, I just was memorized by the shininess. This is one of many species of dung beetles. And we have actually several species in the state and in the country. This is one of the more showy ones. It's called the rainbow scarab. And that is a female right there. She basically lacks a horn. A male will have a nice elongated horn. Now, we got to talk about the benefits of eating poop, because there's just not many species out there that will, and these will eat poop. So these are really good guys. So we encourage them and we want them to eat poop. And so insects that eat poop, beetles that eat poop, there's three different types. There's one type that flies in, little tiny guys, and they'll just lay their eggs and make little areas to feed right inside the poop. And then there's other ones that will they'll make tunnels underneath the poop and then get pieces of poop and drag it down into the ground and kind of guard over them, and they lay their eggs on it. And then there's some that will make a ball and roll it away into a tunnel off it. That's one we're mostly used to. These, the rainbow scarabs, bury it right underneath the dung, which make them really good aerator. They incorporate this material back into the ground. So they're really a very beneficial insect to have around. And the greatest benefit about getting rid of poop quickly, insects feeding on, especially dung beetles, is they kill off the flies as well.
Awesome. And that really was a pretty one.
Yeah.
All right, not so pretty here. This is a Beatrice viewer, Jeff.
Okay.
She thought she was growing garlic, and she thinks she's got wild onions, and she's tried spraying. She has no results. How do you control any of these wild allium kinds of things?
You know, it's tough, and it's the one thing you want to avoid is pulling. You're just going to kind of perpetuate the situation if you continue to try to pull them. You know, with something like this, you're going to want to go through and using a garden fork, I would suggest, is lift and try to pull out as much as you can and stick with it that way. And then later in the summer, early fall, that's when they'll be more susceptible to something like a Roundup. You want to wait. Any of our onions and garlics are just a little weaker when we get into fall. And so if you need to really do something, that's the time of year to look at doing any kind of treating.
All right, and if you have it, you've got it. If you don't
Yeah,
control
that's right.
it.
Yeah. But I think the tendency is to pull. I think
Right.
we all do, and we're just going to make it worse.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Kevin, an Omaha viewer, got a bare root serviceberry. It's the cultivar called Robin Hill. Planted in full sun, watered, the leaves started emerging. They have had rain, of course, but now they're starting to turn red and die off at the tips. Is this some sort of a serviceberry disease, or are we thinking too wet, too much shock? What do you think here?
The temperatures have been rather low too in certain areas too. I would have them look at where they dip down to, and this could be, it doesn't have to be frost damage. It could just be cold temperature damage too, and it usually affects the very terminal parts of the leaf, and it can It can break down some of the chlorophyll, and so you see the anthocyanins, some of the red coming out in the leaf. I think it could. I think it's definitely just cultural. I don't see anything from the photos that makes me think pathogen, although we just discussed rusts, and I do believe that is a host of rusts, so I would keep an eye on that. But from the picture, I think what this particular viewer has is just a cultural issue. Hopefully it'll grow out of it, kind of baby it, and hopefully our temperatures won't keep dipping down as low as they've been.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Elizabeth, a Ulysses viewer, has a 4-year-old Macintosh apple. She wants to know, when is the best time to thin the fruit, and is that the same sort of window for thinning fruit on pears and plums and other sorts of lovely fruits?
You know, right now you want to start doing that. They're at the perfect size where they're still fairly small, so you can tell what's aborted, what's viable fruit. And you want to do it at that 3-4 inch or so with the apples. And the peaches, you want to spread it out to about 8 inches between your peaches. So approximately, stick your fingers out, and that's about how far you want between your peaches. It's going to be hard because nobody ever wants to thin the fruit. They want to leave as much fruit on there as possible. If we have a heavy fruit year, the thing to keep in mind is you can have branch breakage, you can have some other issues down the road that deal with structural damage on the tree. So go ahead, thin that fruit. We had a really good fruit set this year because it was cool, and it's been really nice out, so be prepared to thin more than what you want, and you'll be paid in full later on because you're going to have bigger fruit in the long run.
And we will show you that in our backyard farmer garden. Speaking of which, we were really thrilled to get our garden installed last week, and it does look like we're off to a great start, finally, to the growing season. Let's take a minute to check out the backyard farmer garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to talk about how we're combining both flowers and vegetables to look great in our garden. We have both All-America Selection bedding plants, flowers, and vegetables. So we're actually combining the two to make everything look really nice. It's really easy to do that in a small area, and you can come out and check it out anytime. As you can see, we have masses of flowers, and then we have dotted some vegetables here and there to help give us color all season long. We're also installing some new vines that are going to crawl up our arbor. So we're really excited about seeing those bloom throughout the summer. We're also filling out our containers with some summer color, so our containers will look really full and bright all summer long. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden this week and check out what we're growing.
After looking at bare soil for the past months, it's really great to start seeing that pop of color with all the annuals in the ground in the Backyard Farmer Garden and in the containers. So we're looking forward to an awesome season. All right, question for you, Tom. We don't know where this viewer's from, but they were doing a basil bark treatment on an ash tree, and they noticed inch-long bright green worms crawling from dead areas of a lower branch. Anything to be concerned of, or without a picture, do we just think cool?
Yeah, I always think cool if there's a bug involved, of course. But it really, I wouldn't think anything to worry about if they were feeding on the foliage. We might want to do an identification. Identification would be nice anyway, but I really don't think they're doing much of anything other than they might have been sheltering there. Perhaps they dropped down off the foliage during some of the colder weather or rain, but I don't think they're causing any problems.
All right, excellent. Okay, Jeff, the dreadful bindweed appears to be flowering already along landscape edges and near the turf. Anything to do other than enjoy that one?
I think with any of these weeds, kind of like I was talking about the black medic, we want to avoid them flowering and setting seed. So that's really the key. And I know we want to be sensitive about using herbicides, especially in our landscape beds and around perennials. There's nothing wrong with getting out there, and that's one you would want to try to pull and keep that down. So we want to avoid, again, things continuing to flower and seed and then worry about it later.
All right, pull.
Pull.
Exactly. All right, Kevin, a viewer sent in a question about seeing something that they described as shepherd's crooks in viburnums. Are they identifying the crook wrong or the viburnum wrong? Or if you see shepherds crooking, what is that typically?
And, I don't believe viburnum is a host to any of the classical bacterial diseases that can infect through the terminal parts of the plant and then cause that shepherd's crooking. Again, because of the low temperatures that we've been seeing, although viburnums are pretty hardy at low temperatures, it could be cold damage, and then maybe we're getting tip dieback because of some frost or some cold damage issues. But I don't know of any bacterial diseases that would do that to viburnum like it does to some of our apple trees. But if they were super concerned and if it keeps progressing downwards, they could submit a sample to confirm yes or no on a pathogen. But I think it's cultural at this point.
All right, thank you,
Temperature.
Kevin. Picture if it continues
Yeah,
too might
picture
be,
would help
might
as
be
well.
useful. All right, thanks. Elizabeth, what do you know about Egyptian walking onions? I could have asked you a lightning round question
Yep.
on that one.
Pass. No.
Not much?
Not
I don't know
much.
much about them either, but we can find that out for our next viewer because I know I've seen them. I
Yep,
just
I've
don't
seen
know
them and I don't
exactly
know how they
look.
work, but I've had several master gardeners that want to give them to me and I'm like, I don't know anything about them.
Cool.
Well, they're kind of a winter onion.
Yeah.
So it's one of those that, again, if you don't want them to continue to walk, then as they develop that bulb on top later this summer,
Right.
usually, then you take them off.
Their
right.
growth habit too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
is
Like
Yeah, I
that,
think
yeah.
I think actually that's
Cute.
it.
Onion.
That's
Cute.
He's very close.
All right. Thanks for staying with us here on Backyard Farmer. Later on in the program, we'll hear about a unique Nebraska farm that is using aquaponics to grow flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Once again, this is a taped program, so unfortunately we can't take your calls tonight. You can still send us your emails and your pictures for a future show. Time to fire up the lightning round and hope it stays in the building instead of out for once. All right, Elizabeth, ready?
Ready.
The foliage of tulips and daffodils is just about gone and yellowed. Is it time to lift those things yet, or we still need to wait?
If they're completely yellow, go ahead and you can cut them back.
And how do you store them so you can plant them again in the fall?
You want to make sure that you store them on an even layer. A lot of people like the screen so you can get some airflow around them. You want to put them a little bit cooler, darker place.
Excellent. Is it too late to transplant daylilies, dig up the ditch lilies and move them around?
They're pretty hardy. You can go ahead and move them if you want.
And should the foliage be cut back when you do that, or just let it be?
Just let it be. It's going to naturally die back a little bit on some of those, especially if we get really hot and there's going to be water stress.
Okay, we have a viewer who wants to transplant a 2-year-old apple tree that's in full leaf. Good idea, or wait till fall?
I'd wait for it to go dormant first.
Okay, tomatoes got replanted in the eastern part of the state after the hail. Should they be fertilized?
No need to fertilize those yet. Most of the time we're going to fertilize when they start to bloom.
All right. What is the best part shade evergreen for Grand Island?
Oh, there's too many to name.
Oh, that is a
Cheap.
cop out.
6.
6. We subtract a point. All right, you ready, Kevin?
I'm ready to strike.
Giant linden in Lincoln is oozing something that ends up in a pool of bubbling water at the base of the tree.
Sounds like bacterial wetwood. Not a lot you can do about it, to be honest.
All right. If we have yews that have interior yellowing on the needles, on the interior branches, is that a disease of some sort?
Negatory. Could be natural needle drop or low light conditions, but no disease.
All right. We have a viewer out in the York area who planted sweet corn, and they had corn smut last year.
Cool.
Can they expect to have corn smut again?
If it's in the same location, there's a lot of residue from the previous year, absolutely.
All right. Black spot in roses seems to be showing up already. Are they too late to control that?
That is a polycyclic disease. It will keep reinfecting throughout the year, so they can still treat.
All right. And if they want to treat, what do they treat with?
Let's say propiconazole, I believe, or a chlorothalonil-based product.
Excellent. All right. We have viewers who say their apple leaves are already turning yellow and dropping.
Could be scab. We're getting a lot of scab and rust, which will eventually, if you have enough of it, will turn the leaf yellow and cause it to drop.
Excellent. Nice job for he who usually doesn't remember he's doing the lightning round. All right. You ready, Jeff?
I'm ready.
Turf questions.
Okay.
All right. It's Memorial Day. Should we be fertilizing our turf?
I guess it depends on the situation. If you haven't done any fertilizing so far this year and looking at the temps, kind of see maybe a light fertilizing if you feel like you need to. Typically I would use maybe an organic fertilizer this time of year. It's a little lower in nitrogen.
Excellent. Do you fertilize the buffalo grass on campus on a regular basis, or leave it be?
We fertilize it in June. Typically, we're going to look at a mid-June fertilizing if we're going to fertilize our buffalo grass.
Okay. Grass seed in bulk is still available in a lot of locations. Is that something you would recommend using or not?
Well, absolutely. If it's in bulk, I guess it depends on the mix. And again, we've talked about that before on here, what we're selecting, what species are part of that. But yeah, sure. As long as it was selected for this year, it's still good.
Okay, we have a viewer who said they thought they got rid of the nut sedge and it's back. Is it time to continue to try to treat the nut sedge, and if so, how and with what?
Well, there's a couple different things. The Sedge Hammer product is a good one that we can use before the longest day of the year. So go ahead and use that product now.
All right. You ready?
Of course.
Of course.
You know, I just want to say that it's really about the quality of the answer, not the quantity.
But of course.
Yes.
And so we have a pile of June bugs that have shown up in the central part of the state already. Is it, what is going on there?
Wow. Well, I would say that they're just having a nice early start. So they are usually May, June beetles. So having adults around this time of year is not that unusual.
It's a little frightening though, right?
You'll get used to it.
Okay, is it too late for people to put out solitary bee houses and expect to get them?
Oh, heck no. It's great time for it. I still have one in the master farmer, backyard farmer garden to put out.
Excellent. That's sort of a little reminder.
Yeah.
Is EAB here yet?
EAB is not here yet. No,
All right.
no.
We're going to ask that every single week.
Okay.
What is the best milkweed for the pollinators? Which one do they like the best?
Oh, they like them all. I think common's really easy to grow, but the butterfly weed seems to be pretty popular around here.
All right. We have a viewer who said they have absolutely terrible scale all over their lilacs. Are they too late to treat scale?
No, actually, I would let them go and wait for some of the predators to come up.
All right. Nice job, all. Okay, Elizabeth, you get to do the honors today for Plant of the Week.
Yes, we have a couple of very lovely samples here for Plant of the Week. We'll start off with the tall spike. What it is this is Prairie Dusk Penstemon. It's one of the selections that's a hybrid that Dale Lindgren has done through his breeding program. It's really, really nice because it has a really pretty basal foliage on it. The flowers are like most of the penstemons where they have that beard and then they've got the strong nectar guides to help guide those pollinators and guide those bees right into their full sun. Does really well in those dry to average soils. It doesn't like it extremely wet. The other one is both pretty and edible. It is a Chester thornless blackberry. So we don't very often get to see the blackberry blooms on here, but it's an aggressive spreader. So that's something to keep in mind if you go after this one. It roots down at the tips of the branches. And this one is starting to colonize under a bunch of old pines where it's really dry and shaded in that environment. It's supposed to have huge fruit, although I've never seen them, and I don't think many people have had the chance to eat them yet. But two very lovely plants this week.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. And that would be our colony of Chester thornless blackberry. And we have not gotten to eat one because the birds get there first. All right, next picture question, Tom. From a Kearney viewer, and we got another viewer who sent in the same thing a little bit later. What are these growths on the swamp white oak tree, and what do you recommend?
Ooh, that's actually interesting because Jim's identified these very recently from trees on campus, which I actually brought some in. So we can kind of see some unique features about this particular. This is a gall, oak petio gall. And I've talked before about the way galls work, but you have an insect or some organism comes along and feeds on the developing part of the plant, which causes abnormal growth. In this case, it is a tiny wasp that when this leaf was starting to develop, female came along and she laid her eggs on petiole, and then the plant started to grow, and it basically grew kind of on the top of the leaf and on the bottom of the leaf. Now, this was done by a little wasp, a little synipid wasp. And within this gall, these little larvae of the wasp are feeding. And there's actually probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 that are living in here, and they're well protected. The galls actually don't really do anything bad to the tree. I mean, if you don't like the way they look, you can trim those particular things out, but I really would not recommend any sort of treatment at this point in time.
Nature's wondrous.
Yes,
Yeah.
beautiful.
All right, Jeff. So some parts of the state have had excessive moisture, and I think we have somebody who sent in a picture of really long clippings kind of everywhere. So should this have been bagged? Should they have mowed twice? Does it hurt to leave these clippings on the turf?
Sure. Well, it's something I'm not going to want to leave these clippings on the turf, so I would want to remow this site. You know, probably the first thing that we'd want to look at is the height of the mower. So you should be mowing at 3.5, 4 inches. And certainly when we're having wet, cool conditions like this, we raise the decks up about as high as we can, mow more frequently, so that way we avoid something like this. But that's kind of the key here, you know. We like to keep our decks at least at that 3.5 level, but certainly there's this time of year and in the fall as well, when we'll raise those decks up to 4 and just mow a little bit more often.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Okay, Kevin, a viewer got straw bales and they were intending to use them as mulch in their garden, and it got a little wet, and they did this. So they're wondering what they are, and are they still safe to use in their vegetable garden as a mulch?
Yeah, so that looks to me like a member of the stinkhorn family of fungi. They like our mulch beds and straw beds. They're breaking down the carbon that's in both wood mulch and straw like this. They're a good thing. You don't want to just eat that structure, that fruiting structure that is actually poisonous, but it's not going to be on your fruits or vegetables at the end of the season. So I would just let it do its thing. It's breaking down the mulch. It's providing nutrients to your plants. It'll eventually go away. If you want it gone, you can remove it, spray it with a soaker hose. It'll eventually go away. They're really ephemeral. It won't last long. And in the end, it's a good thing. Just don't go out there and grab it and eat it, because that's gross.
and a little dangerous. All right, thanks, Kevin. Elizabeth, east side of Council Bluffs, on the top of a bluff, beautiful lilac last year. This year it was a terrible big disappointment. She had a few flowers higher up, but other than that, did nothing unusual. That's about what she got compared to what she's used to. That's what she got last year. So she'd rather have that than what she has. Any ideas?
You know, this is going to be one of those instances where they're probably going to want to rejuvenate or renovate that. Another thing to take a look at is how big those inner canes are, because my guess is as big as that shrub is, some of those inner canes are going to be bigger than you can put your hand around, and then we're talking about issues with the ash lilac borer being a problem. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can take out 1/3 of the largest canes within that, and then over a 3-year time span, you've completely rejuvenated that shrub. It's easier said than done when you have that big woody lilac there. You can, if it's well established, cut it back within 6 to 8 inches of the ground. It's going to take several years before it starts to bloom. From experience, done it. But eventually it will start to bloom again, because it does bloom on that new wood. It's going to take, like I said, several years though. But eventually you're going to want to rejuvenate that shrub if you want it to bloom again.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, we're going to take a few minutes to feature another local business promoted by the University of Nebraska's Buy Fresh, Buy Local organization. This particular business is growing fresh herbs and vegetables in an aquaponics system that uses much less land and water than traditional farming.
What started as Jeff Jervik's backyard gardening hobby has grown into an 11-acre farm near Denton. Grow with the Flow is a business that uses an eco-friendly system to produce vegetables, herbs, and flowers.
With aquaponics, it uses about 15% of the land and 5% of the water of traditional agriculture. That's due to the vertical gardening and the closed-loop system of water returning back to its source that make it so efficient.
Aquaponics starts with a 2,000-gallon water tank filled with about 900 goldfish. Water from the tank irrigates the plants that are set up vertically.
That water is able to percolate down through the towers, depositing that waste nutrient to the roots of the plants so they can absorb it. What isn't being used in those towers, the extra water is being collected through a drain into a sump tank and pumped back into our fish tank here.
Plants grow in a rock-like material called growstone.
It's made from 100% recycled glass. It's very porous rock, very lightweight. The roots of the plants love to grow around it, grow through it, and the benefit is that it traps water, nutrient, provides for aeration and support.
Aquaponics will also feed seedlings grown in recycled milk jugs from a local coffee shop.
3 tanks here will house fish. Water from these tanks will be irrigated up on our wall system here. We take our cuttings, our young seedlings that have rooted, we transplant them in our net pots here, and we're able to place them inside our bucket system here, protected during the winter, so that come springtime, when they're ready for retail sales, they've grown up, they've become established, and they're ready to fill a beautiful garden.
Grow with the Flow is expanding for year-round operation.
What our intent is to develop all 11 acres with hoop houses, greenhouses, large outdoor systems, traditional type planting and production, and be able to produce a large volume of product for wholesale to local markets.
I've been part-time work here for over 2 years. Watching it from our first test trials all the way to what we have now, it's really gratifying to see that we're finding something that works and is accomplishing what we're trying to get done.
Grow with the Flow is expanding for year-round operation.
What a beautiful application for agriculture, that it could be done anywhere. That's how you get local production happening, is a system that allows you to do it locally anywhere.
You can go to the University of Nebraska website and check out the Buy Fresh, Buy Local to see more videos that feature local businesses providing fresh food, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very
That's
cool.
Pretty cool. Looks like a lot of work, but still pretty cool. All right, Tom.
I'm right here, Kim.
She has one question: moth or butterfly for this particular picture?
Mothra. This is North America's largest moth, actually. Wingspans can get over 6 inches, up to, over 6 inches. So they can get pretty big. Big, beautiful moth. Isn't that lovely? So what's happened is they were cocoons, they were pupae all winter long in trees, up against houses, various places, in a nice silken cocoon. These moths emerged. The female will go out in a nice spring night, and she will produce a sex pheromone. So nice volatile molecule that goes several miles downwind, and males that are downwind will pick that up and they'll fly up to her, and it could be more than a mile away, it could be several miles away. So they fly a long ways, they will mate, and then the female will go find leaves of many common trees and shrubs. So they like silver, maple, they like apple. There could be several different types of hosts, but she'll lay her eggs on the underside of the leaves, and she might have up to 100 eggs that she lays in her lifetime, and then they die off. Now the larvae feed all summer long and get bigger and bigger, and then they'll pupate in August maybe, and then they'll spend the winter as a cocoon. So really, they can cause some damage to the foliage, but they don't live that, not many of them live to make it to the adult stage. So there's a lot of natural enemies. So the best thing is just to let them be.
Yeah, they're just gorgeous. All right. Okay, Jeff, Rock's favorite grass, but perhaps it's doing better here as our climate is changing. It is zoysia, and
Right.
this particular viewer does want to know, do we recommend this turf? If we don't, how do you control it or manage it if it's coming in and you don't want it?
If it's one that you want to try, and certainly I've seen it do very well in certain locations. It's one that you're going to want to have a lot of sun with it. It doesn't tolerate shade very well as a warm season. And I would suggest using it in something that's fairly well contained. If you have between a driveway and a sidewalk or something like that, some sort of hard surface that's containing it or edging it, because if it does very well, it does have a tendency to spread and invade cool season turf, and then we have kind of that two different turf look, which at certain times of the year, especially in the spring and fall, is not real attractive. So if you have something that's fairly well self-contained, an area that's bordered, I think it may be a good choice for you.
Well, it did look like that one was attempting to go across the street.
Right, yeah, yeah.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, serviceberry night apparently, Kevin, because this one, the viewer thinks, yes, indeed, it is rust on the serviceberry, and then the fruit is looking a little not so edible either.
Yeah, so you see the big bright orange. There's at least one or two pustules there from the rust that you can see. So it definitely is rust on serviceberry. The blossoms, again, it could be maybe we're dealing with some cold damage, but rusts do attack the blossoms and the fruits as well. So it could be the rust fungus attacking those as well. Again, the products that we have, propiconazole being one of the better ones, active ingredient for our fungicides, are preventative. So they kind of need to have been applied already in order to be effective yet this year. So keep in mind that you might see it again next year if you really want to try to prevent it. And again, sanitary things, sanitation like removing the dead leaves from the ground and destroying them in the fall will help. Unfortunately, it may blow in from somewhere else again next year, so it's going to help, but it might not be the end-all, cure-all by just using sanitation. So if you keep getting it year after year after year and it's really causing a lot of leaf drop, then you may need to think about a fungicide application, but early in the spring.
Do you know the alternate host on that one? Do you recall? Or
Again, so serviceberry is a part, the rust that attacks serviceberry is Puccinia andropogonus, and it's a species of rust that actually has a very large host range. So it also gets on Ohio buckeye, it gets on the penstemon, and as the name of the fungus implies, it gets on andropogon, which is our blue stem grasses. And there are a number of other species of ornamental plants and some other grasses too that are hosts. So to try to control the alternate host, to control it on serviceberry isn't very realistic either because of the amount of different plants that it can be on.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Kevin. All right, Elizabeth, this is a Sutton viewer, has a mature flowering crab, numerous shoots coming out of the ground. They've used glyphosate, it's burned them down, they come back. Is there any way to permanently control them?
Unfortunately, with certain species, we're looking at doing the sucker control or sucker management on a regular basis. There's a couple of products like Sucker Stopper or Finale that can be used on those water sprouts, those suckers at the base. Be careful with the glyphosate or the Roundup. Because those suckers are attached to the main plant, there's the possibility that at some point in time it could go into the main tree and you can get some damage or some issues that way. You can continually to cut them off, or I'd look at the overall health of that tree too. If you're getting a lot more suckers than what you've normally had, there's a possibility that tree could be showing signs of stress that way.
All right, and the permanent solution to suckering crab apples is plant a different tree. All right, Tom, we have a couple of people who last year had terrible problems with cicada killers. Cicada wasps, whatever you'd like to call them. Their question is, if you had them last year, you're going to have them this year, and when to expect them?
Really, we're talking into June probably. You're going to see males first. They'll be buzzing around being kind of territorial, so you get kind of close to them and they may try to scare you away. And it usually works because they're big. Females will not be quite as aggressive, and they will be basically nesting in the same areas. So if you're trying to get rid of them, once you see the males come out, try to fill in those areas, prevent less open dirt for them to nest in. I wouldn't go as far as saying spray them because they do a beneficial service. So I'd say try to modify the environment to keep them from nesting in a particular area. You might even put screen over the area, but try to drive them into a different part of your property.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, Jeff, so we have people who also had pokeweed or pokeberry last year, and they think it's come up again already pretty aggressively.
Okay.
Any thoughts on how they can control that? Obviously in landscape beds, because you'd mow it off. It was in your turf.
Yeah, right. And it's one of those that people, again, because it has kind of an ornamental feature to it, that folks kind of like it at first and all that. And it does have a nice big flower on it and ornamental fruit. You know, it's a tough one, and I think especially if it's in a landscape bed, I want to again steer away from using herbicide in there. I think a good sharp spade, and you might have to dig a bit of a hole to get that out, but try to get as much of that taproot as you can out of there. But they typically set a pretty good sized taproot, so you might have to do a little bit of digging to get that out. But that's what I would suggest.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Must be rust night. Kevin, a Clarinda, Iowa viewer. She says her hollyhock leaves now have orange raised bumps on the underside of the leaves, and she's wondering, is this a virus?
Nope, it sounds like rust. Get some WD-40, and it should, no, kidding. It sounds like rust. Again, if we do want to think about a treatment, a fungicide with a propiconazole active ingredient will be preventative. But again, not a lot we can do when the conditions are right. Rust show up, and there's so many different hosts for this fungus that it's hard to control. The plants that it grows on and the spores that it creates are very, very, very tiny, and they can blow very far in the wind, and they can get splashed around by the rain. So they travel very far distances. So your garden, your landscape plants will be under attack every year from these rust fungi.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Not the answer they probably wanted to hear, but Elizabeth, we have a Plattsmouth viewer who would like to get a cherry tree for their landscape. She's thinking about North Star. Do you have any suggestions for cherries in kind of that southeastern corner of the state?
When we're talking about cherries, we're talking about those tart cherries. So North Star, Balaton, some of those are going to be a little bit better cherries suitable for this area. There's a third one, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But those are two, North Star and Balaton. Mount Morrissey is the other one.
Montmorency,
those are the three that normally we recommend for tart cherries.
All right, and they're kind of in the right part of the state. Yeah. All right, good. All right, Tom.
Yes.
Another milkweed question.
Oh, good.
Common milkweed. This is a viewer who would like to control it in the landscape. They don't want to get rid of it, but it can tend to be a happy camper. So any suggestions on how to keep it where you want it?
The best luck I've had, because I have a lot of common milkweed in my yard, and it moves very quickly underground in all kinds of different ways that plants are mysterious to me. But usually the best control is to get rid of them. I mean, you can take a spade and try to scoop them out of there, but also I've had good luck just taking a corn knife and cutting them as close to the ground as possible and going back after them a few more times during the season.
All right, we'll see whether it dukes it out with our asparagus in our backyard farmer garden. Because
It's a battle.
Yeah,
We need more monarchs to eat it,
that would work too.
control it. Yeah.
All right, Jeff, there is an interesting weed on campus called woolly burr sage. Is that something that you can control? Should homeowners expect to see that in their lawns in certain parts of the state, or what do we do about that nastiness?
You know, it's a very tough plant. It has a tendency to spread rhizomatously through the landscape. And when we've had luck in treating it or taking care of it is through repeated treatments with a herbicide. So using, again, a Trimex sort of product and going there and kind of persistently after midsummer starting to hit it and sticking with it on a regular basis. So not sure where it came in. It came in some time ago, and it has a tendency to spread, and just when we think we have it taken care of, it'll show up someplace else. But the other thing with us is it tends to show up or end up in maybe our brush and our mulch, and then it's spread that way as well. So
I think it's an artemisia, isn't it, with that rhizomatous?
it might
something
be,
like that?
yeah. But yeah, we have an issue with it, and it's repeated treatment.
All right, thank you. Okay, Kevin, hotter temperatures finally and a little bit of sunshine. So the poor sycamores that were looking like ghostly gray anthracnose horribleness, can people expect that to disappear?
Well, it's not going to disappear, but you might stop the progression of the disease. Again, it's a fungus, so it really likes the foliage to be wet, and we've had constant wetness because of all the rain. So if that foliage dries out, you're not going to get rid of all the lesions that you have, but you may stop those lesions from going onto other leaves and throughout the rest of the tree. So sunshine and a little bit of a breeze is going to be good for us here.
All right, Elizabeth, in 2 seconds, people have dead branches in their burning bush. Can they prune them out now?
Yes.